The day my first song released felt electric and magical and beautiful all in one. But the path to get there was not as cute. Your first creative project, whether it's a song, a play, a chapter, a piece of art, is usually going to be the hardest. So whatever creative endeavor you're on, be aware of these mistakes. Not avoid, because some of these are a little unavoidable unless you go through the process, but know they're coming. The first one, giving yourself a little bit of space before telling everyone about something. And this ties into what I did, was picking a release date before it's 1000% certain that everything's gonna work. Dates and times and numbers, it's all such a delicate dance when you're in a creative field, because you're not thinking about that, nor should that necessarily be something that you were thinking about. It's a different side of your brain. You're thinking about how to creatively depict something, how to find the best version and release it to the world. Times and dates and numbers are always going to feel like it's clouding everything up. It's totally the other side of the equation. It's such a balancing act, not wanting to place all this pressure on a very spiritual process, while also knowing things need to happen, things need to get out. If things never get out, nothing's gonna happen. When it comes to actually picking a release date for something, my big mistake was picking it before it was ready. Initially, I wanted my song to release on October 31st, 2023, but I just picked that date internally for our team to kind of know, hey, want this finished by this date. I started kind of subtly hinting it on social media. Thankfully, I never really actually said it's gonna release on this date, so I kind of saved my own butt a little bit. And in turn, it ended up working well, because there were still some tweaks to the master that if I actually tried to stick to that date, it would have just either not happened or wouldn't have been as good of a version as it could have been. Fast forward, and I decided to release it on March 7th, 2024, which it did, thank goodness, it successfully released. But this is kind of another thing. I actually regret announcing it for my first time, and here's why. This is the first time I ever released a song. That means that I had to learn how to use a distribution platform, what I needed to do with Spotify, how I needed to set everything up, the splits, all of these things that I needed to do beforehand that really placed a lot of pressure on it. What I should have done instead, I think, for my first song, is I should have just released it without telling everyone, made sure everything was good, and then announced it on social media like, this is out. You want to make sure that you know the platform. You want to make sure that you're comfortable with everything. I took a really big risk by setting that date as March 7th and not actually knowing like what it might look like. I remember waking up on that day and grabbing my phone, praying to God that everything worked and nothing broke. I was so stressed out because I had promised everyone this is when it's going to be out. More than anything, it's going to place unnecessary stress on you. For me, I don't have that many followers. It's not like there are all these people waiting on it, you know? But just internally, the amount of stress that I felt like I had because I was like, oh my gosh, I need to make sure this is right. It was a lot. Art takes time, and it's okay that it's going to take time. But I would say be a little bit more subtle with your first release. Even if you're launching a website or you're launching a blog or you're just starting something creative, you should be able to have that flexibility that if something were to go wrong, people don't really know about it, so it's okay. I know a lot of people say like, oh, tell everyone about your work, tell everyone. That's great. I think that the intention is there, but it's more about you than anything. It's about your own ability to be confident in if something's gonna work. You deserve that time at the beginning of your creation process to make those mistakes and not feel like everyone's watching you. Because there might be a time where there are a lot of people watching you, and it sucks when you make mistakes and everyone's watching you and everyone has their opinions. You're allowed to be quiet. You're allowed to be subtle when you first start. The second thing that I would do differently is I would really stick to an ongoing schedule with the creative team that I'm working with. I will preface this by saying I am pretty good at keeping a schedule and wrangling everyone up, but looking back, I feel like I could have been more strong about it. What would happen is that we'd meet for a month every Thursday, but then we'd have to go away. We'd miss 2 Thursdays, and then we'd be like, oh, we're tired, that, you know, like we missed the next week. And it wasn't always on that Thursday. And I think there's also a space of, if you have like a team meeting on Thursdays or something like that, Even if you can't make that, do something during that time and stick to it. Still keep that time. There are a million excuses you can make, and if it's not on everybody's calendar, it's going to be assumed that you're not meeting. This is something that I'm working on right now because there are times where not everybody can meet. Static might be traveling, Garrett might not be available, Mike might not be available, but I should still dedicate that time to work on another element of my creative business, of my music, writing another song, finishing a bridge. There are always things to do within that time frame. I really do feel like that time should be kept sacred, hold everyone accountable for it, and more importantly, hold yourself accountable for it. If you're going to be spearheading this project, it's up to you to make sure that everyone's meeting and to make sure that big decisions are made and things get released, or else things are kind of always going to be in limbo. The third big mistake that I made, and I don't even want to say made because it is current, it's ongoing, it's ever flowing, playing the comparison game. This is something that comes up again. It's the creativity and the numbers. How do we balance these two? Creativity is what makes this beautiful art. The numbers, the metrics, the dates, the times, the frequency of postings, the people listening, the people watching, the people clicking, this is equally important. These are both going to work together seamlessly to create an amazing business for yourself. But they are on the opposite sides of the brain. And sometimes, even though they can synchronize so well, they can also feel like they're opposing forces. You don't want to worry about numbers. You don't want to worry about if people are going to like a song when you're writing it. But at the same time, this is something that business owners are constantly thinking about. Are the people going to like this? Is this for the people? There's that ongoing balance of comparison. This is something I have been working on my whole life, but especially 4 years even before I released this first song, and even now. Constantly looking to other people and saying, well, they're this age and they've released this amount of songs, and I'm this age and I've released this amount of songs, and I am clearly behind because I haven't released that many songs, and they have this many views and I don't have any views. You could make yourself go crazy looking at all of these numbers. I know it's so much easier said than done, but just having the awareness that it is something that probably all artists are thinking about constantly. There are 2 things that I have done that helped me immensely with this. I'm not saying it's completely gone, but I'm saying it helps me a lot through my process. 1, I'm really mindful about my social media usage. I used to do doom scrolls, and all that did was just remind me of everything that everyone else was doing and how far behind I was and how I needed to catch up and how that would take so long. I would get myself into a spiral. The scroll would turn into a spiral. The other thing that I have done is I have surrounded myself with incredible artists and people, with amazing people. So many of my worries go away and so many of my comparisons go away. I'm always having conversations with my musician friends about self-worth and feeling like I should have this and I should have this out. Sometimes you just need to hear like, I totally know how that feels. Maybe it's coming from a musical theater world, but there's always been this natural tendency to automatically feel competition with someone else, when in reality, there is nothing I need to fear. There is absolutely all the space in the world for all of us. And it only takes like 2 seconds for me to meet someone to be like, oh, you're a friend now. I get very intimidated by people. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like if I hear that someone else is an artist, I'm like, oh my gosh, what are they gonna think of me? And I'm gonna have to fight for my space and blah, blah, blah. It goes into a spiral. But the second that you actually talk to someone about it, it feels so much better. Connecting with other artists is going to remind you how you're not alone. And it's going to encourage you to just stay in your own lane and that your journey is really, really beautiful and unique. You are on your own path. That's just what I want to remind you. All of these points, I don't know if they can necessarily be avoided because some of it's just part of the process, but artist to artist, you're not alone. Whatever piece of creative magic that you're going to be releasing into the world, it is going to be amazing and you're going to make mistakes, and that's totally okay. That's the only way that you can continue doing this. As long as you continue releasing things with love and really honor your own experience, I think it's all going to be great. I am grateful that I'm over this hump of releasing the first of hopefully many, many creative projects. But if you are still approaching that first release, I hope this just gives you a little bit of grace to be gentle with yourself and know that it's all a process, and I'm not telling you to avoid any of this. I'm saying this is what happened to me and this is what very well may happen to you, and it's totally fine. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye!